Hi, and welcome to Uncover Your Story, the podcast for creatives, changemakers, and big-hearted rebels who believe in the power of stories to inspire, connect, and make a difference. I'm your host, Sarah Orton, brand photographer, storyteller, and content creator. I'll be drawing on my 20 years of experience working in communications to guide you through the storytelling process, from the mindset shifts to the practical steps we can take to increase the impact of our work. I'm so excited to be here with you. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Sarah Hand, whose career is a testament to the power of compassionate leadership, collaboration, and the power of storytelling to drive change. Sarah began her career as a midwife, supporting mothers with HIV during some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. Her deep commitment to improving care and outcomes for those impacted by the HIV epidemic led her to transition into the non-profit sector, where she has worked tirelessly to design and lead impactful HIV programs. For the past 10 years, Sarah has served as the CEO of Avert, a global leader in HIV information and behaviour change communications. Under her leadership, Avert has not only expanded its reach and impact, but has also undergone a remarkable transformation. Sarah made the bold decision in 2023 to transition Avert's core brand to African-led organisations, ensuring that their legacy would thrive where it is most needed. Thanks to her vision and dedication, this has been a resounding success, with the transition of Avert's brands Be in the Know and Boost at the end of 2024 to organisations in Kenya and Zimbabwe, where they are now taking forward Avert's mission in health literacy and equitable care. Sarah's leadership style is one of empowerment and collaboration, bringing out the best in teams and fostering partnerships rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose. I may be a little biased, as I know this because I spent 2 years working part-time with Sarah at Avert as a content editor and project manager. Whether she's inspiring her team to co-create innovative digital tools or tackle stigma through storytelling, she's demonstrated the profound impact of working together to create lasting change. I'm so excited to dive into her wealth of experience and insights today.
Thank you, Sarah. One lovely warm introduction. Indeed, we were part of that amazing team that I had the privilege to work with and nurture and coach. So thank you. It's great to join you.
Oh, thank you. Right, we're going to crack on with our quick fire round. Creative, changemaker, or big-hearted rebel, which do you most resonate with?
Oh, thanks, Sarah. That does make me laugh. So I would say I'm big-hearted, but I'm not necessarily a rebel. But yeah, and creative and big-hearted. So I'm going to blend your words.
Okay.
I'm not on the complete label of being a rebel, but. Yeah.
See, I think that makes you a rebel. You're refusing to choose my labels.
Yeah. Oh.
What words do you choose to live by?
Empathy and resilient. They're two, they're kind of values and characteristics that I think have certainly helped me navigate my life and my choices. And resilience in particular is a skill set. Some people have to learn it and some people have it. But I really feel that you can't underestimate the importance of having that resilience. And I've seen it in my work. So much of what we'll talk about later, I'm sure, in terms of what motivates me to continue to support people living in difficult circumstances. But when you see resilience and people's ability to overcome challenges, then and empathy.
Great. Yeah. If your life was a book, what would the title be?
Smile and journey. I think being able to project a level of outward support, joy, again, just listening and having empathy, I think can come so much from our facial expressions. So I've often been told that I smile a lot, and I feel the benefits of smiling in me, and I feel it from others. And then journeying, being able to travel, not, it doesn't be miles, but being able to just journey in the things that we do. And again, in my own life, I have had that opportunity and privilege, and I've gone about it with a smile on my face.
I love that. You definitely do. And I really relate to that. What song gets you on the dance floor?
So I am a girl of the 90s, obviously. You know, I had my youth on, dance floors and, gay clubs in London in the 90s. But I felt that, more recently now in my 50s, I
Yeah.
find that what gets me, cycling faster at the gym or jumping harder is moves like
Brilliant.
Jagger. Yeah, because I always thought
Excellent.
Mick Jagger had some pretty cool moves. So I love
Yeah.
the Maroon 5 moves like Jagger. Yeah.
What's a daily ritual or habit you can't live without?
Quiet morning cup of tea. I wake up every morning I do live in a family household. I manage to carve just my own little time to just enjoy sitting, having a quiet cup of tea, and I wake up slow. My cat usually comes and joins.
Sounds lovely. Having two young little ones, I don't always manage that
No,
calm
no,
early
no,
morning.
no. It will come as they get older.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So we're going to dive in now to the deeper, bigger questions. So Avert has a long history of using storytelling, such as personal testimonies, in booklets and digital platforms like Be in the Know. How do personal stories enhance the effectiveness of behaviour change communications?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So I think, that behavior change communication work is all about, finding that trigger, finding that point helps build that motivation for change. And it does take multiple levels of intervention, from policy change to pricing to product placement to health worker competency. But personal stories play a huge part in that kind of motivational part. If we do see that behavior change is this, sort of building blocks, there are pounding elements. But I think the personal stories give that relatability. They give what can often be, and I've seen this myself, the missing part, whether it's when I used to work more clinically front facing in the HIV response, trying to understand, what will make the difference in treatment adherence here. I think often having that opportunity to hear, in the older days, we didn't have digital, it would have been that people were put together with other people that they could listen to the personal story of change. I think it brings about an opportunity for people to relate more closely. And if the personal story isn't seen as I'm telling you what to do narrative, so that's supporting that personal story, then it's a very powerful part of the overall package that makes up behaviour change interventions.
And many of Avert's campaigns seem to harness emotion to foster empathy and understanding. So can you share an example of how storytelling helps reduce stigma or increases health literacy among a specific demographic?
I mean, I think that what we at Avert were able to benefit from greatly was the willingness of the audience that we engaged with to share what they had got from listening or engaging, watching, reading the content we gave them. So we could see from the huge wealth of very emotional comments that would come back on our content. And while they are, again, snapshots, they're building blocks. So, where we had carefully considered and crafted how we were going to reach people, people were definitely taking the time to come back and say to us, your information has changed how I feel about myself. So when I would see those comments coming back, and those are comments people have chosen to share, but I think, we've seen countless examples of people who've responded positively to campaigns that we've delivered, countless, ranging from this has helped me in a small thumbs up, so just a reaction, all the way through to saying, I didn't know this before. So, hearing from people who have access to other forms of information saying, I didn't know this has helped me, this has changed how I feel about myself, changed how I will now respond to my son, my daughter, my brother, who's also living with HIV. It's hugely powerful. And then health literacy, I think definitely, again, our objective was always to recognise that, of course, health literacy builds agency. So by agency, I mean one's ability to act and feel in control of the decisions they take. Or, and again, to use a sort of jargon term, build self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is when we understand what health information means to us and our own particular situation. So in HIV, what I used to often see was people didn't realise that they were at risk of behaviours that they were taking because they thought the risk to HIV lay with somebody else. But if you, as we did, help build self-efficacy, we were building people's understanding to interpret their own behaviours against own ability of risk. And people would respond again by saying, I understand this better.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And so I also wanted to ask you about how, Avert has worked across different regions with diverse cultures, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. How do you ensure that stories used in campaigns are culturally sensitive and resonate with local audiences?
What it ultimately comes down to is that those stories have to be heard from the people who are living those lives, whose experience we are aiming to tell. It's not, we're an enabler. We basically used a network of existing partners who often worked in peer outreach programs, due care and attention, respect local culture, etc. So it was about bringing that voice. And then, if it was necessary to help them then recognise how that they would communicate that to their community, to the people that they knew best, again, blended carefully with the need to get across the accurate evidence-based information, because that was our duty of care in the process. Their duty of care was to make sure that they were able to share what was relevant for others to hear. And our duty of care was to make sure then that it was indeed accurate. We never told the story for them.
Yeah, and it's something that I learned so much about during my time at Avert. Obviously, as you know, my background was in storytelling for nonprofits. I've worked for other HIV organisations and the British Red Cross, and I used to interview people a lot and help, support them to tell their story that way. But when I came to Avert, I really learned much more about the whole process of co-creation, which is very much the core of how you work, isn't it? At the heart of how you work. And so I'd love for you to share a bit more about how you built co-creation into the process of working at Avert and why it's important to include the target audience in crafting the stories and the difference it makes.
We really got our teeth stuck into the co-creation process through a project that I was immensely proud of and hugely excited by, which was Young Voices. So this also captured a time when we were really starting to understand the power of digital and the fact that there was a growing access to digital communication in low and middle income countries to a degree that lots of people were underestimating. There was still lots of assumption. Young teenagers living in very rural parts of very low income countries across East and Southern Africa didn't have access to phones, but they did. They did, often in shared environments, but they did. Co-creation is very much, it is the creation of both parts. We brought with us our evidence-based understanding of how to communicate the technicalities, the correct parts of what was going on. And in our case, this was HIV prevention, living with HIV, addressing the stigma that sits around HIV, and then looking more broadly at the fact that HIV sits within a sexual and reproductive health environment. And then populations, people, the individual whose experiences we wanted to capture so that it could be amplified and shared with others was the co-creation part. So we really got our teeth stuck into this 8 years ago in the Young Voices project, which interestingly started with gathering a large group of what we would have called our target audience. These were, young kids from across the East and Southern African countries. And we got them to bring the hard copy material that they're used to looking at, that gets distributed in the clinics, that the health workers are throwing out at them. And so when we got the young people to review these materials, we were able to take, well, what is good about this, but what do you really want to talk about? and just ask them, well, what do you really, really want to talk about? What do you want to see? And what can we do differently then in the digital space? And that was a phenomenally impactful and innovative project that then really helped build that foundation of confidence for Avert as well, that we could do co-creation, that with integrity gave a voice to people affected by the issue that we were addressing, that space, and for us to learn from them and them to learn from us. So a real joint opportunity. It's an evolving process. It will evolve because people you're co-creating with are evolving their understanding of how they equally want to use the power of digital communication.
Great. And for those who perhaps aren't at all familiar with this process and how it all works, I just wanted to share a little bit about how practically it worked and how possible it is, because you may think that it's just not sort of logistically possible. You can't afford to fly out to Africa and to meet together, but literally it's possible. The way that we did it was we worked with local community organisations who had the contacts with young people in their communities, and they would bring them together for us on Zoom calls. And we would literally have Zoom calls with groups of local people. And then we would also set up WhatsApp groups, and we would be able to communicate with them on there. We'd be able to share polls and share documents on the WhatsApp and get feedback and work together as we developed the different sort of materials we were doing. And yeah, I just thought it's worth literally just spelling that out, because some people may just sort of assume that it's not that sort of feasible to do.
You're very right, Sarah, and thanks for doing that, because, I mean, Avert is a small organisation. We were small with a small budget, and you're absolutely right in what we might have historically done, which was to gather people in focus group discussions, and often then, because you're pushed for time, you've only gone overseas for like a week, you're very extractive in your nature. But what we were able to do in the process that you've so well highlighted was give this iterative development space by bringing people together initially on a Zoom and put them on WhatsApp, and voices come alive, and I think that a digitally enabled co-creation space that we definitely have now is one in many ways maybe a bit controversial to say, but I wonder if it hasn't been more equitable and hasn't provided more opportunities. As you will know, some of the people we were able to engage with and have voice with, I wonder if they would ever have been the people that a partner would have selected for us if we were flying into the country and doing a focus group discussion, because they might not have felt confident to give their voice initially. And so I think a digitally enabled, well considered, with the same safeguards, safeguards have to be applied, especially when working with marginalised populations where issues of legal reprisal, etc., might be of concern to them, or even just further stigma within their community. Those same safeguards have to be considered and applied. I think digitally enabled co-creation space that we created, produced excellent results. And in my role as the CEO, it was obviously also the most economically efficient way for us to achieve that objective without it being compromised.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks. And can you share a bit more about how, when Avert pivoted to the digital platforms, how did the use of digital storytelling evolve to drive behaviour change?
Our own organisational journey in the HIV response has evolved, and storytelling has always been there. It goes back to how we were capturing those stories, gathered from in-country visits where people would share the impact around, their lived experience being in the HIV crisis in their countries. So when I joined, we were already obviously using digital. What's evolved immensely during time was obviously the power of social, and then recognising what platforms as low-income countries were becoming digitally enabled, what they were choosing to do. I think evolution is continuing. And it should continue for any other organisation that's working in this same space. But it was always about recognising how we could have the best impact with our audience, so that you're not just simply taking, print material and then making it online. It's very different from saying we're going to have concerted digital strategy that means that this information can reach the audiences that we want. So having video, having short copy, having tools and resources that were not text heavy, light on language use, highly instructive in terms of what people were looking to learn and how they could get that through simple navigation.
So I'm curious to find out if there's any campaigns which had storytelling at their heart where you feel they didn't achieve their intended impact, and what learnings would you have drawn from those?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think some of the campaigns that maybe tried to be too edgy, where maybe we've felt that the agenda is to try and break down conservative feelings around sex and sexuality. So let's have a campaign that asks everyone to talk about what they enjoy most about sex. Now, the HIV response has long, from the outset, once we got over the immediate medical model crisis, has always had that element of using, sex and sexuality quite strongly within it. But I think some of our campaigns, when we had, again, the target audience has always been in the countries with the highest impact. So that takes you to East and Southern Africa, parts of Eastern Europe. I think maybe where we were trying to push boundaries that weren't, for cultural reasons, weren't ready to be pushed. And I think that remains a learning in the sector. And that comes back to, again, what we've learned so much through the co-creation process, where, again, we might have assumed that the young person telling their story hit on certain issues and then they don't. Do we need to push that, or is that okay? So I think campaigns that haven't done as well are the ones where maybe we've pushed more on sex, and where sex is still I think globally is still private endeavor, and so I think when we try and over challenge that or even invade on that, might not always work.
And just counterbalancing that, and where storytelling has been, and I think continues to be so powerful within the HIV epidemic, which is as much access to healthcare and treatment is still a big issue in certain areas. One of the biggest issues, right, the barriers is stigma, isn't it? The stigma around HIV still remains so strong. It's crazy. But so I think storytelling is so powerful to break that down. But why is it taking so long to break it down, that stigma? Because the power of the stories is to try and show, the real person, isn't it? So to get to understand this is a person, they're not a disease, and to break down the issues around shame and all these things. So it can be incredibly powerful, can't it? But also, why is it taking so long? Have you got any answers, Sarah?
Yeah. Then, I mean, I think, the stigma and discrimination that's existed around HIV from the outset is crushing. It cannot be underestimated, and it's absolutely crushing to progress. It's been there for all the reasons that we know, and we won't go back over the history lesson, but, HIV started with marginalized population, and the stigma, unfortunately, has stuck because of the prejudice and lack of equality and human rights that existed then and sadly still exists now. And while the people who are living with HIV come from all walks of life, all sexual orientations, and we seem not to be able to shake that it's still somehow seen as a shameful disease, because by and large occurs as a result of sex, which again is a normal part of the human existence. And so storytelling has without doubt helped shift the dial, and the dial has changed. I think although it's still a crushing part of, as I say, the HIV response still today, that we will still hear people today living with HIV still fearful of telling, their employer, even telling a health worker because they've changed services or whatever. The dial has changed. What is really damaging, though, that is not changing as quickly is self-stigma, is the stigma individuals feel about themselves, on themselves. And that self-stigma obviously affects every aspect of then how individuals living with HIV are able to fulfill their full potential. That burden that they feel around their lack of worth, that their lack of, access to the other things that bring, simple pleasures to their right to healthcare, is something that we're continuing to work on. Storytelling obviously has to remain a key part of that. I think for all of us that are in that opportunity to present information and to enable people who have those lived experience to connect with others, I think our opportunity lies is ensuring we have a broad range of those stories being told so that people don't switch off and that, I've heard that before. We have to ensure, because there's a broad lived experience out there of people living with HIV, I think it's about capturing that broad narrative so that people in some cases who think that HIV is over, think that, it's fine, isn't it now? They kind of say that rhetorically, and then when you tell them stories to show that, well, no, it's not fine now, still not fine, there's still action required, can be quite surprised. So it's back to that issue of being able to ensure that we can tell that broad range of stories of lived experience so that people can be sort of shocked into reminding and made to question the actions that they take that mean that stigma unfortunately still exists. So it's changing, the dial is changing, but there's a lot more to go, and we need to ensure a broad range of stories being told.
Yeah, thank you. And do you have any further thoughts that you want to share in the light of sort of like the changing context this year, in particular with the USAID cuts and the UK aid budget cuts, and how are things for the organisations in Africa that Avert transitioned to? Are you still in touch with them at the moment? And what more can we do through storytelling to address the damaging narratives in current context? And
thanks, Sarah. Thanks for bringing that up. So obviously the whole sector, the HIV response has been entirely upended by the decision for USAID to stop work, review, and anticipate massive cut to the sector that we should acknowledge they have vastly supported for the last nearly two and a half decades. Their support has allowed the HIV response to make the progress that has been made, and there has been so much progress made. The HIV response's goals that we're aiming for, which we're not quite on track with, but we could, with more effort, achieve. But the upending of the HIV response means that those things are not going to happen. And so, yes, what's going to happen, and we're already seeing this, is that who we have supported for so long to be able to speak out about their HIV, access HIV prevention because they understand they're at risk, or stay on their treatment because they're one of the 39 million people living with HIV, are staying on their treatment, are understanding the importance of their treatment, and are now losing access to maintain their treatment programs, are now anxiously understanding what's going to happen. So of course, there's going to be short, medium and longer term actions that are going to be centred around the fact that there's going to be a lot of reprioritising and reworking out that needs to happen, because what we were doing is not going to continue as it was, but we know what needs to be done. And I think behaviour change communication, supported through storytelling, remains a vital part of the efforts in prevention, because it does exactly that. It brings people to understanding what their risks are. For people living with HIV, of course, that sense that you're not alone, that storytelling brings, the sense that I'm going to hear what other people are doing, But it needs to now, because of, again, other changes that we're seeing, it needs to be supported by an evidence base. So where people might, and HIV has long suffered from this, which is, a massive amount of misinformation, which is back to what feeds the stigma and discrimination challenge. There's no end of misinformation. You can stand on your head, you can do all these, unproven things, and that will mean that you don't get HIV, or you will, you'll cure yourself of HIV. None of those things are true, but we need to counter them now. We need to counter the growing level of misinformation that will continue to be prevalent to throw people's understanding of what is correct and what's not correct. And again, having storytelling supported and amplified through evidence-based information providers like the Avert takeover partners, I think will help in this immediate period as the sector reorders around the cuts and the impact of those cuts on programs. But it will remain vital, but it will need to be amplified more strongly than the misinformation, which is well funded, and there's an objective, albeit complete mystery to us why there would be an objective around misinformation. There is. And so I think our duty is to continue to find ways to counteract, to point out what's not evidence-based, and ensure that people have access to solid, trusted, evidence-based information to support better and informed health choices.
Thank you. And we should probably just share now the website URL for Be in the Know.
So we have transferred Be in the Know to a fantastic, young, vibrant Kenyan organisation. They're operating in Kenya, but they obviously Be in the Know .org is operating globally, but the content, the look and feel and the content that is carried on across the Be in the Know brand, from the website through to the social channels, we're largely targeting the regions of the world and the people that continue to face the biggest burden and challenges around HIV. But beinthe.know.org is now in Kenyacom's Hub, safe and innovative and creative hands. And I think they are particularly young and energetic in their creative comms and their narrative change work. And I think, what's exciting for us is that Kenyacom's Hub do work on a broader range of narrative change issues, including some of the issues that we're seeing as a result of the oppression of free speech and right-based health communication. And I think that having Be in the Know now they will use that to the advantage of the populations that have every right to have access to a much freer, more evidence-based source of information.
Yeah. And just to add that Be in the Know, it's broader than just HIV. It's sexual health and has a very positive attitude to pleasure, sexual pleasure, and it just has got so much useful information for young people. Yeah, so do check it out. Sarah, what's the most important advice you'd give to people on using storytelling to create positive change?
I think one of the most important aspects of using storytelling is definitely the issue of working with and engaging with the client, the community member whose story that you're going to tell. You have a responsibility to make sure that their story is the story that they want to tell. So don't over influence or burden, but help them understand the power of their voice, the power of their story, and the power that it can have. The video series that you worked on right at the end of our ownership of Be in the Know, that's now been transferred to the Kenyacom's Hub. Powerful stories where, with your careful handling, you gave voice to community health workers who were able to talk about, their own lived experience with HIV and what motivated them. Trans individual who was able to talk, openly and passionately about what it meant in an environment that we might think, gosh, what must that life be like? But they were able to speak. And I think that that's what the storytelling piece comes from. So, making sure that, we find the stories that need telling, but we allow the people whose stories they are to tell them as they want to, and help them recognize that that story could help somebody else. They often didn't initially know that their story was going to be a powerful change maker for other people also sharing their experience, but not aware, not openly able to communicate. And I think the storytelling process gave them that voice, that confidence. So it was a change opportunity for them as an individual, but then to know that what they had shared would help others is extremely powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so powerful. Last question. What's a short story from your work that brings you joy?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, many years ago, many decades ago, when I worked as a community midwife, it was working in this area that really got me motivated and determined to then go and work in East and Southern Africa. But in London, the majority of women living with HIV that we were looking after were from Uganda, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, South Africa. So they were from the region, but they'd come to the UK. We were looking after them, but there's some incredible stories of their lives, the struggles and hardships that they had gone through, not just to, living with HIV in the 90s was very different to living with HIV now. So recognizing that their lives would end, but they were determined to migrate to essentially a safer place where they could have their child. And there's always one woman that I will always remember who undertook a very difficult migrant journey. I mean, we hear so much more about migrant journeys these days, but very difficult migrant journey in those days from Uganda, made her way to London, made her way to us. And we looked after her, and she did give birth to, she came with a little boy as well, though, but she gave birth to a little girl who then did not become vertically infected with the HIV that she had as the mum, and that the older son also had. But her story and the migrant journey that she undertook, her determination to have a baby that would not have HIV, because as much as health information was available then, she knew that it was at least possible, and she felt her journey to the UK would help that. But I won't forget her, and I won't forget how her life and her story impacted on me and made me feel that, there has to be more done so that women like her could feel as safe to have their babies without HIV in their own countries, with their own support network, with their own culture and traditional norms around the birth of a child and the growing up of a girl. And I won't forget the stories that she told me. I'd not been to Uganda at that point, since been, and she inspired me to go and to understand the bigger world out there.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for all your words of wisdom that you shared with us today. I really appreciate it. And I just want to wish you all the best as you move on to I know you're looking now for your next venture, and
my next challenge.
looking forward to seeing where you go next.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Sarah, and to you too. Thank you.
I just love how Sarah's leadership style shines through every story she tells. It's rooted in empathy, resilience, and courage. From supporting mothers living with HIV as a midwife, or making the bold move to transition Avert's core brands to African-led organisations, she's shown that leading with heart often means making brave choices, and she knows how to bring people along with her through the stories she tells. There's so much learning from that conversation, including how we can better use our platforms to support a diversity of voices and lived experiences. Also, just to note that since we recorded that conversation earlier in the year, the incredible advocacy and lobbying that was carried out by civil society and others in the immediate aftermath of the US government cuts to USAID has more recently resulted in the renewal of some of the PEPFAR funding, which has given hope to some of the organisations working on HIV programmes, especially in Africa. There does, however, remain a huge funding gap, and very real concerns remain that we will see a reversal of hard-won gains. Okay, so here are my 3 biggest takeaways. Number 1. The right stories can be so powerful and move the dial on big issues. Sarah explained that communications to change behaviour is all about uncovering the trigger to motivate people. And she said personal stories of change are often the missing piece in behaviour change work. We can have all the policies, funding and health systems in place, but it's someone's lived experience that truly connects, breaks down stigma and makes someone stop and think, that could be me, or I'm not alone. It's a reminder of how finding the right stories to tell, when done with empathy and respect, can shift perspectives and change lives. Stories have played a key role over the past few decades in dramatically reducing the stigma around HIV, although there is still more work to do, and especially around self-stigma. Number 2, co-creation isn't just ethical, it creates better stories and stronger impact. Sarah shared how Avert embraced co-creation, inviting young people from the communities where Avert was working to play an active role in shaping stories and campaigns. This wasn't a tick box exercise in responsible communications. It was about truly listening and building solutions together. When people feel heard and included, the content we create resonates more deeply and has a lasting impact. Co-creation also helps avoid mistakes, like the campaign Sarah mentioned that pushed boundaries around talking about sex in ways that were culturally inappropriate. It's a powerful reminder. If you're not part of your target audience, it's even more important to bring them into your storytelling process. It's the surest way to ensure your messages land with the people you want to reach, with respect, relevance, and impact. Number 3. Evidence-backed stories are key to fighting misinformation. One of Sarah's big messages was the need to ground stories in evidence. In a world where misinformation can spread faster than facts, storytelling isn't just about emotional connection, it's about trust. Evidence-backed stories give people not only something to feel, but also something reliable to act on. They help cut through myths, build health literacy, and empower people to make informed decisions. So whether you're talking about HIV, climate change, or any issue where myths abound, pairing lived experience with credible data is one of the most powerful ways to create change. You can check out Be in the Know at beintheknow.org, which is now run by the amazing team at Kenya Comms Hub. It's full of brilliant inclusive sexual health content. If today's conversation has you thinking about how you could better share stories, I'd love to help you explore that. You'll find links in the show notes to my brand storytelling services and resources. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, please follow the podcast, leave a review and share it with a friend. It really helps other big-hearted rebels and changemakers find us. Until next time, uncover your story, own it, share it, and shine.